Joining me right now is a woman that I've reached out to on the Twitters. This is where I troll Twitter in a good way for people to come on the show because you can't, go into people's websites and then filling out the contact and all of this. And she responded very quickly because she is still campaign managing, yes, Julian Castro, who I love. Yeah. Love that brother. And she made it happen. He's been on a couple of times. Every time he comes ready to answer questions, I think he would make a dope president. We'll see what's happening. Let's welcome to the show campaign manager for Julian Castro, Maya Rupert. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
All right. How does one become a campaign manager for a person running for president?
Well, honestly, my background is not actually in electoral politics. I worked for Secretary Castro when he was Secretary of HUD. I didn't know him. I was in the Office of General Counsel while he was Secretary, and he and I ended up working on a project together. And I was so taken by the way basically all I knew about him at the time was that he was somebody that got talked about a lot as a potential VP for Clinton. And so I knew he was a politician. I knew he had, served in San Antonio. I really didn't know very much about him at all. And I was so impressed by the way he approached government service, that he approached government service the way social justice people do. And so in my sort of mind, that outlook, how do we center the people that have been most marginalized? How do we reach the most people to do the most good? That was really a sort of a feature of movement work, not so much political work. So to see a politician have that outlook, honestly, my reaction was like, wow, like I didn't realize that kind of existed in this world. And so I was very taken by him at that point. We ended up working together on a few projects and developed a close relationship. And so I've just kind of stuck with him. So when he decided to do this, and, he described how he wanted to run, which is the campaign we've been running that is about reaching out to vulnerable communities and bringing people in who don't always feel like their humanity is reflected in our politics. I felt like, well, that is something I actually, even though I don't have a background in electoral politics, I can do that and I can translate that vision and work with the team to get it done. So that's kind of how that happened.
Why isn't it resonating? The most frustrating thing, having spoken with Secretary Castro a few times, he's genuine. He definitely cares. He has the chops, the background. He can galvanize a coalition. He can make some things happen if elected. I know he could set us on a course that would set us further ahead as a nation. I know these things. Yeah. People aren't trying to, his poll numbers, he can't even hardly get on the campaign, on the debate stage. What is not connecting, and why isn't it connecting?
So I think a couple of things. One is I take a step back and say, I actually do think it's resonating. I think one of the difficult features of this cycle is that with all of the people who are involved, the DNC, I think they had, they had to figure out a way to force a pacing and narrow a field. And they chose a metric in polling that is imperfect for capturing the kind of excitement that is going to bring in young people and people of color and people who are non-traditional voters. They don't get polled, right? Like, so one of the things that I always sort of push back on in general is that I think the polling, it's not set up to capture excitement for a campaign like this, right? Because, the institutions that are able to poll, the sort of qualifying polls that the DNC counts, they don't oversample young people. They don't oversample people of color. And as a result, a lot of those voices are not actually reflected in the poll numbers. So we see resonance that isn't reflected in those polls.
What's your metric then that you're using if you're not looking at polls to let you know whether or not you're moving the needle?
So, I mean, I think our grassroots support is a huge piece of this. We have been one of the consistently have one of the highest percentages of our donors come from small donors from folks that don't traditionally give. We have the highest percentage of people of women who have given to our campaign. Like if you look at who is feeling brought in, it really does look a lot like the coalition of people that you need to win the Democratic primary.
Okay, Barack Obama.
Yes.
Was able to capture young people. He figured out how to do text messaging and using social media. He was one of the first presidents, the first campaigns to understand the ground game differently. Yep. And that's still there. That blueprint is still there. So even if he's not polling, that kind of attention that Barack Obama was able to garner among those people. Bernie Sanders, who primarily has a young base, of people, Andrew Yang, who has a very young, excited base, they're making noise in a way that I don't see the noise made for Julian Castro. And again, it hurts my soul because I know this man can do some things for us. Yeah. I don't know what to do though. How, maybe his brother who's a little, who's got, maybe needs to grow a beard. I don't we're that superficial right
beard.
now, Maya, this is how superficial we are. Maybe there needs to be a beard challenge or something. I don't know.
Right.
I'm trying to help.
I will look into whether or not he's willing to grow a beard.
He should grow a beard.
He teases his brother an awful lot about the beard though, so I don't know if he's going to want to do it.
He should do it.
He should do it.
That's why he should do it and talk about it on the Instagrams and the internets and the interwebs. Because those are the things that get young people's attention, and then they stay for the other stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm so concerned about Julian Castro because he's so brilliant, and he has really great answers to tough questions that African Americans care about outside of just the surface questions that people always assume that black people care about, going to jail and being poor. And he answers questions that black people who have that aren't about going to jail and being poor. And I love that. I just want him to resonate more.
Right. No, agreed. I mean, I definitely, this has been so much the puzzle of the cycle. I really do. I sort of go back to, but I think you're right. I think there are candidates that have been able to sort of, have that resonance reflected in the polls as well. I think one of the tough things is we came in, he had very low name ID, right? Yeah. He wasn't coming from an existing platform, so we also didn't have a campaign committee to transfer money for him. So we really were starting from scratch and building. And so one of the things that we've just been trying to remember is that we needed, we're going to take the time that we need to take. And so we're still in this and we're still fighting. But I think too, the tough thing about, a lot of these things they're linked, right? So it's like you don't have the polling numbers and then you don't get on the debate stage. That dictates press, right?
And donor money.
And donor money, right? Yeah. So the problem is it's hard to take out one piece and say, but why can't we just focus on this part or that? They're so linked. But I think that's I think that is, because that's been our challenge, we have been able to kind of look at this. It really, this has been a long game for us. It will continue to be. Nobody has voted yet. And our goal is to use this time to keep doing exactly what he's doing.
We're talking with Maya Rupert. She is the campaign manager for Julian Castro. See, I did the whole Julian Castro. I'm also, I'm watching Hillary Clinton went on Howard Stern last week. It was an amazing interview. Yeah. Had she done that interview in 2016, I think it would be, the Russians couldn't have stopped it. Yeah. Right?
I agree.
I think that we're in a particular time, we were talking about this before you came in with Lizzo, and this kind of anything goes, there's no decorum. Julian comes from a place of there's respectable ways in which we're going to do this, and we're not going to call people out of their names, and we're going to act like gentlemen, and we're going to act like human beings, like our mama raised us properly, but that's not what's resonating right now. And it appears, we watched Kamala Harris bow out, which also has a ripple effect on people like Cory Booker and Julian Castro. What is he saying about that? About Kamala, Senator Harris?
Yeah, he's been really explicit, which I appreciate, about the fact that it's a loss to the field, and then that it's a frustrating loss to the field because it did feel very often like she was being held to a different standard than a lot of candidates were, and that is something that we as a party are going to have to grapple with, particularly because of how much we rely on Black women to show up and vote and be the base of the party. It's ridiculous that we have also set up a system that makes it so difficult for Black women to be successful. So he's been very vocal about that, which I appreciate, because just on a personal level, that was a frustrating thing to see. It has had the sort of weird consequence. I think it what it did is it put some urgency to it for people, that they looked at this historically large and diverse field and now are looking at a set of frontrunners that do not reflect that and do not reflect what a lot of voters are saying that they want. And so one of the things that that has kind of come out of that is some of these points he's been making have started to resonate with people a little more, because people are looking around and seeing in real time, this is what is going to happen.
What's your tapout point? When do you decide? Because, with Kamala Harris, I said after, that last situation with the campaign person leaving and then putting the letter out publicly and then going over to Bloomberg. I said on these airwaves she's going to have a hard time coming back from that, and the next day she bowed out. How do you assess as a campaign when it's done, when you can't go any further? Is it money? Is that going to be the litmus test?
I think, I mean, there's an obvious one, piece of resource that you can't, if at a certain point, if it's impossible to pay people, sure, that becomes but I think for us, it's really been more, it's twofold. He got into this race because he had a vision and he saw a path to victory. And if it becomes abundantly clear that there is no path, I think that's a tap-out point. But I also think that given what he's talking about right now and the issues that he is raising and the fact that those issues, even when they're not reflected in the polls, they are reflected in the conversation. He is pushing the conversation. He has a message that is resonating with people, and he's leading the conversation even when he's not leading in the polls. One of the things we're really conscious of is, what he made this comment the other day when, because he's been talking about the fact that Iowa and New Hampshire should not go first every time and the outsized role that they play. And he was responding to a comment and he said, I'm not trying to change the game. I'm not trying to change the rules in the middle of the game. I'm trying to change the whole game. And that's a big piece of what this campaign is doing, and we want to be able to keep doing. And so as long as there is a path and he has that message and he is talking about issues nobody else is willing to talk about and pushing the conversation forward, we want to stay in this because there are a lot of people who for the first time are saying, oh, hey, I haven't felt seen before in this process, and I do now, and we see there's value to that.
That's great. So if Super Tuesday, which now has brought in states like California, which has changed the trajectory of many, so people were saying, well, Kamala Harris should have stayed in at least a Super Tuesday. So you're saying Iowa and New Hampshire we should check off because that was the thing that catapulted Barack Obama because nobody expected him to win Iowa at all, right? We thought South Carolina for sure, because even Jesse, I think, won South Carolina. But if he doesn't win Iowa and New Hampshire and then goes into South Carolina and doesn't have a good showing, then clearly it's saying something. But you're saying that it's set up in a way that if you don't win Iowa and New Hampshire, you're pretty much, and it's unfair because those states don't reflect America.
Those states don't reflect America, right?
Her future.
They don't reflect America, and I think there's another issue that's there too. There's the lack of diversity in the states, but there's also the fact that candidates that are talking about issues that resonate with a lot of people that vote on Super Tuesday, those issues, the issues that are particularly relevant to Iowa and New Hampshire, play an outsized role in what people. So it's if you're speaking to the issues that matter to these states, then
you're missing
polls are going to be right. So it's like you get that early attention, and the problem is it conditions candidates to speak to those voters. So
and voters too,
absolutely,
because we're lemmings. All right, 866-801-8255. We're talking with Maya Rupert. You're an attorney.
I am, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's your area of expertise?
Well, I haven't practiced for a bit. When I practiced, I was a litigator. Right after law school, I worked for 3 years at a big firm, and then went into policy and kind of didn't go back. So I don't practice anymore.
Why did you go to law school?
At the time, I thought, what I wanted was I wanted to work on, I wanted to work for the ACLU. That was kind of what I had in mind. I had this sense of the problem is not the law, the problem is how it's interpreted. And I want to be one of the lawyers arguing about how it should be interpreted. And, I kind of went through law school and understood more about the law and ended up enjoying a lot of the stuff I thought I would about it. But one of the things I think for me, litigating was a little more sort of limited. I appreciated policy because it felt you could be more creative. You could figure out what the problem is, and there were a lot of different ways you could go about, kind of getting it done. And that's what I ended up kind of being drawn to.
Tell me about your upbringing. Where are you from?
I'm from a small town called Yucca Valley in Southern California.
I was going to say, that sounds westy.
Yes.
Sounds very West Coast.
It is
very Native American from founding, probably, used to be Mexico, maybe used to be part of some other place. Now it's...
Yes. Now it's a small town. It's near like climbers, like Joshua Tree, the monument, like that, It was a very white town, my parents both commuted about an hour and a half each way because they didn't want us to live in the cities that they worked in,
Which was
Riverside and Redlands, because they had a very specific idea about what they both came from Cleveland, Ohio, and they thought there were things that they wanted to avoid about living in an inner city. And so they moved us to this sort of small, low-income white town, and there were a whole other set of issues that I don't think they fully put into that calculus. But they felt like they sort of didn't want us growing up in what they felt like would be closer to an environment that they grew up in. So my sister and I grew up in a small town where we were one of very few, if not the only, black girls.
The worst
the town.
thing about that for you, Maya Rupert.
Honestly, I think that it took me going to college to really start to understand and appreciate kind of the role that my racial identity played in my larger picture of my identity. Because when you're young, you just want to fit in with everyone else, right? And so there's this sense of, I wanted my race to be like the least salient thing about me. And so I feel like even when I was young, like I was very aware of a lot of issues, and I was a very strong feminist, and I had a lot of the same ideas that I have now. But the one place that I did not want to just talk about was race. Because I didn't want people for some reason that struck me as being a girl and talking about feminism didn't bother me, but being a black girl and talking about race and racism did. It made me think I shouldn't be talking about those things. And it really wasn't until I left that town and started reading more and started thinking more that I feel like I got comfortable with my racial identity. And that, for me, that was such an awakening, because my racial identity is it's such an important part of how I think, how I move through the world, what I write about, what I talk about. The fact that that didn't play a role until I got older I do think that was a loss.
So you don't code switch. This is just you.
This is me.
There's no code switching. No, I could tell. We're talking with Maya Rupert. So what was the book that shifted your thought? Because it's usually somebody's words get in your soul and changes the whole DNA, changes your chromosomes.
The first one that did that for me was Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? It was Beverly. Now I'm blanking on her name. But yes. And
former president of Spelman College, Beverly.
All right. Don't obsess over it. We'll
okay.
get it.
All right. But yeah, so I read that, and I remembered having that sense. I remembered knowing that people did
Tatum.
think. Thank you. Thank you. That people
Google fingers. My Google fingers are tight.
Yes. But no, I remember thinking that I knew people thought, oh, when all the black kids get together, it's sort of, that's something kind of almost insidious happening, but not thinking the same thing when most of the other spaces were all white. And I knew people thought that way, and I just took it at face value. And reading that, I was like, of course that, because
would you sit with the white kids in school?
Well, the problem was there weren't
any
other black kids until it was like, I remember when I was a senior, like there had been like a couple of kids moved, but senior year, your friends, you kind of, you know what I mean? So there was that moment of, am I going to sort of, the last thing I want to do is make it seem like I'm being unfriendly to these other black kids, but I also have a friend group now, and it was, so there was that kind of cultural.
Your parents weren't wrong though, right? 866-801-8255, because I think this is the struggle that a lot of people have with raising their children. Culturally, so for some of us who don't have the cultural aspect, they do the Jack and Jill thing so that they can be, get black culture. But your parents had a trajectory for you and your sister of success. And success in America, and it's much like immigrants coming here, doctor, lawyer, engineer, there's certain things that say my kid is successful. You're going to do well in school. I'm sure Maya Rupert had great grades. Did you finish top of your class?
I was 7.
See? Okay. You're going to go to the best of colleges, and you're going to have these letters. And you did that. Yeah. So they weren't wrong.
They weren't wrong. And that's the thing. I one of the things I'm fascinated about is the calculus that they went through, because it's just like anything. The thing you have, you sort of take for granted, and you think, okay, that'll come naturally. What I want is to make sure that they have opportunity that we didn't have. That was my parents' whole thing. But the piece that they just got without thinking of always being around other black people and never doubting, that it's like just within community, having other people to look to and other girls you would look up and say, oh, you're pretty and you look like me, just some of that simple stuff that they just took for granted. I mean, within our family, I mean, like my parents, you made the joke about the code switching. No, this is definitely me and how I am. But culturally, I grew up like a Black girl in the 80s and 90s, like with what I was watching and listening to and things like that.
So what were you watching and listening to? Oh.
No, that's right. Like in our home, but then outside, it was like I would mention. I knew nobody was watching Living Single; they were watching Friends. You know what I mean? Like It's like but I think for my parents, right? Like it's just they were like, well, you can get that part here, and then we don't have to worry about certain things if like that they kind of made that bifurcation, and it did. I mean. Again, I do not fault them for a second, but I do think that there were pieces of it they just weren't thinking about.
Yeah.
Do you fit in somewhere right now? So my thing for the next decade is for people to fit in with themselves, however you show up in the world, right? And because I think that's the thing we most struggle with. This system of our society is set up so that you have to fit in somewhere, that there has to be a group that you're a part of. There's all of these tribalistic things that I think put us at odds with one another, as opposed to people just walking into whatever it is that you are. But to find that in a space where everyone says that you're not valid is a tough thing that I don't even think people can comprehend. If everything that you are is through somebody else's lens, how do you ever find your true self, your due north? I don't know what that solution is, but is Maya Rupert in a place of like complete?
Absolutely. I mean, I feel completely comfortable in all Black spaces. Like, not growing up that way I feel very fortunate that you're not Candace Owens. No, I'm just saying. I am not.
I think she's pretending, though. I think she's pretending.
No, seriously, I love our people. I love us. I desperately want to be in Black spaces around Black people. I'm comfortable there. And honestly, I don't feel like, I do think that there are some things that, again, from growing up in a white environment that I maybe say or do that some people consider different within Black communities. But honestly, I know a lot of Black girls that talk just like me. I know a lot, you know what I mean? Like I have not had the experience that some people describe of going into a Black space and being rejected or not being, that has not, thankfully, that has so not been my experience or project. And I never want to invalidate someone else. Like if somebody says that's what happened to them, like I hear it. I do sometimes want to challenge those people a little bit to say, okay, is the thing that is being rejected about you, I mean, the way that gets sort of described is, there are kind of Black spaces where some people feel like, oh, you're acting too white, or right. And I'm always kind of like, all right, and if that's happening, it's happening, but challenge yourself a little bit more and to think about like maybe what else it is that people are responding to, because if you immediately go to that place, is there a chance that you're putting something off that is, I'm trying to seem different than the rest of the community, and what internalized, because we all have our, the unfortunate thing about institutionalized racism is we have internalized anti-Blackness as well. And if that's coming out, how much is that playing into what you're experiencing? So again, I'm not trying to invalidate anybody's experience. I've been fortunate that hasn't been mine, but I do sometimes want us to think about that a little more critically.
I couldn't agree more.
866-801-8255, because Drew gets roasted a lot for being Drew Huxtable.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I do.
But this is love. So again, we do
but
the
it's
dozens.
Love, though.
It is completely loving. It is so
Yes.
loving, and it's just fun.
But also,
why.
my friends will sometimes bring up the difference in my upbringing as a point of like, well, Drew, of course you think that.
Got it. Okay.
But it doesn't, because we're not monolithic.
Everybody's struggle is different.
Thank you. And just because you had no struggle does not mean. I'm sorry. Listen. Help us, 866-801-8255. That's the number here. Maya Rupert is here. She is the campaign manager for Julian Castro. Drew McCaskill is here as well. He's part of our family. We're going to mess with him as much as we need to. How can we help Julian Castro win? Give us a blueprint. What is your solution?
I mean, one is if you have a landline and that phone rings and it looks unfamiliar, answer it because it could be a pollster.
Or it
right?
could be the Russians.
That's true.
I don't know. Is there
That's
another
true.
way? Let's find another way.
But no, I mean, honestly, I think right now what people are realizing is that there is still movement left in this race. For a very long time, it seems like a lot of people in the media have been trying to be like, all right, these are your choices. It's between these people. Make up your mind. I think one of the other sort of things about Senator Harris withdrawing is that people were like, wow, that's a seismic shift. Those can still happen. And so at a moment like this, I want to be able to capture and reflect what I see when I travel with him, which is that new people are coming to events, more people are getting excited. And so polling is the one that is most a part of the vocabulary of this cycle that shows, oh wow, there is something happening here. So really, it's polling, but it's anything that's going to show that people haven't made up their minds yet, and that there is still room to move.
So when they call you and ask you who you are looking or leaning towards, say Julian Castro.
Say Julian Castro,
even if it's someone else. Just do it.
At this,
do it.
Please.
Do it, Julian Castro.
If he's in the orbit for you, say Julian Castro. Keep us in.
Julian Castro. Julian Castro. All right, number 2. So if you get called to poll, don't hang up on them like I do. Answer the poll. And then say Julian Castro. Just make it simple. What else do we need to do?
Go to juliancastro.com. One, I mean, obviously donate what you can. And I mean that very genuinely. I cannot stress enough. Like sometimes people will be like, oh, I can only do $20. We are a grassroots campaign. We did not, seriously, we did not start with a committee. We did not transfer funds. You know, we raised a little over $1 million in the first quarter, and we have stayed because people give $20, right? Like that is, we really, really do rely on anything people can give. But also just check out what we're doing, because I do think that when people go to his website and take a look at our issues page and see that, like, we don't have a Black agenda, right? Like we don't have a policy for the Black community. Everything we roll out is with an understanding that there are specific issues in various communities that make some of these issues harder. And so we have this intersectional approach that we've been able to bring to a presidential a platform, which is something I've never seen, and I'm so proud I'm getting to work on it. But I think there really is something unique that is happening, and when people see that, I think people there's an excitement that happens there.
Okay, so polls, donate, JulianCastro.com. There's a donate button right there at the top. It's blue. Just click on it. $10, $5,
Make it real easy.
$20. Is there something else that we can do? Because I feel like there's a social media void that other people have been able to capture, and I don't want to name any names, even people that aren't in the campaign anymore, like that Beto dude from Texas, was able to get lightning in a bottle social media wise. And we're such, and we were talking about this off mic a little bit, we're so easily led by the bauble, the shiny bauble. How do we do that? Because I even struggle personally with, folks going viral, and I'm like, why are they trending? What the hell? Why am I looking at this?
Yeah.
The nonsense.
The marketer in me has always looked at the Castro campaign and the Harris campaign and wondered why there aren't more surrogates like deployed specifically to specific groups of people. One of the things that I always felt like Barack Obama did incredibly well was Obama had middle-aged white guys on the news every night talking about how smart Barack Obama was and how like he's going to change the world, right? He had amazing surrogates. It was also really interesting too because he had young Jewish people, in Jewish spaces caping for him, calling up their Jewish grandparents in Florida who were retirees and say, this is an election, you've got to do it differently. Like this guy, like he has our support. Like, you can't just vote Republican like you used to do. People were deployed
even
in social media.
hit the young Hispanic Latinx space. Yeah.
And it feels like there's not a strategy for having surrogates in spaces with specificity. Bernie has Black people on Black college campuses talking to Black students about why they should vote for Bernie, and I don't feel like the Harris and the Castro campaign have done that. And maybe they haven't. I just don't notice it and don't see it on social media.
But if you don't notice it, then it hasn't been effective, and that's important.
Right. And I think yes, I think one of the tough things about a lot of the things that we have centered is that they do resonate with people from, marginalized communities. So we have a lot of people of color.
We need celebrities. We need the big people with the millions of followers. We need a Kardashian. Let me
I feel like this election is going to be a persona fight, not a policy fight for Democrats.
Correct.
And I know that is atypical for political purists. But you've got a reality star in the White House right now. Yeah. So if nothing else proves that this is a persona fight versus a policy fight, and I love this man's policies. Like, I love what he has to say and how he says it. But persona, I want you guys maybe to, at what point do you say strict policy and ethical good guy is not enough? We've got to make a pivot to persona.
Yeah. And I think, right. I think the trick is to try to do them at the same time, right? Yeah. Is we've got, I feel like
simple. Hire Drew.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll give you my Rolodex.
Yeah.
Don't tell him where you got these numbers.
I won't.
Feed them to the campaign.
Absolutely.
Get these people in line, gather them up, and then deploy them. You don't have to do it. You guys work on the things you work on. Yeah, but you're missing that You're missing that, and that's the thing. Unfortunately, get you a PewDiePie. If PewDiePie.
Yeah.
PewDiePie. Do you have a number for PewDiePie? Smiz, get on that. Let's get PewDiePie on here.
PewDiePie.
Logan Paul. Yeah, I'm going to give you a list.
I'm not sure those are the best names.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
I'm sure that
doesn't matter. There's millions of people. They vote. Them kids will vote.
Yeah,
PewDiePie
absolutely.
said to vote for Julian Castro. We don't know why. Does Julian Castro play video games? I'm trying to help y'all here. Does he play? Find out what his favorite video game is. Boom. Yeah. There you go. There's billions of people over there, all over, that play these stupid video games.
I will get him on a video game.
Yeah. Fortnite. What's the most popular? Fortnite.
We can just get him on Twitch.
Let's get him a Twitch account. And we'll have him playing. He's got children. All right. I'm telling you, y'all don't even know.
Look, I love this. I love the idea of getting him in front of a video game.
Which I'm saying that Drew is right. This won't be about policies. This will not be. People are not voting based on that. Trump is going to win again. He's not going to be convicted. We're going to help, though.
Yeah, and particularly getting new entrants into the game, because we're not going to. The Democratic Party is not going to turn white voters. Like, that's just not going to happen. We have literally not had a Democratic candidate for president win the white vote in the last 40 years. Clinton didn't win the white vote. Obama didn't win the white vote. Carter didn't win the white vote. I feel like that part of the issue is getting what new entrants into the market, new voters to participate. And just like I feel like with Obama, it was like young people calling up Meemaw and saying, Meemaw, you got to vote differently this time. Like, this black guy is really cool. You got to vote for him. I feel like that is now you're going to have Big Mama to call like Young Ray and have it sort of cross-generationally there. Like, this is not a game. You've got to vote this time. You got to do it differently. I know you're 28 and registered and not registered, but you got to register this time.
Right. Agreed. I think we've spent a lot of time talking about how to win back voters. I think there's another way of going about it is to drive up our numbers in some of the places where people just aren't coming out. And I don't see, I think those people are going to be motivated by new ideas, by bold ideas. And so, but yes, it also needs to, we need a Twitch account. We need a Twitch account, and that's where we're going to start doing our policy rollouts.
Yes! Victory! All right. Maya, you going to stay in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all so seriously.
You have
so
an
much
open
for having
seat
me.
here. So does Secretary Castro. Maya Rupert. You can follow her at Maya, MayaRupert. I know somebody wants to talk to you about their background. Y'all can hit her up on Twitter, and let's get this campaign. JulianForTheFuture.com or JulianCastro.com. Donate. Let's get it and answer those polls. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.